Okay, I want to welcome everybody that's tuned in. I sent out a few alerts to friends, especially in the Midwest, to talk about a crisis that it's really caught my attention, and I think it should be catching the world's attention. Unfortunately, in the United States, we are dealing with a nation of people that they're myopic, and they will let any crisis just unfold without the slightest attention. People are worried about, their tans and their mortgages and whatever. And meanwhile, in Venezuela, this weekend there was a election, if you want to call it that, where not even the company that managed the software for it even certified the ballot. It was an election that, by all accounts, even whether it's the European Union or the United States or the Carter Center, nobody's certified it. But now Venezuela has replaced their National Assembly, that's their parliament. We're going to give a little introduction now so people can join. But I have first Mr. Juan Carlo Diaz from Gainesville, Florida. Where are you from originally in Venezuela?
I'm originally from El Tigre, Estado Anzoátegui, in Venezuela. That's the east.
Okay, and from Southern California, we have Carlos Cordova.
Yeah,
Say hi.
that's me.
And where are you from in Venezuela?
I'm from the same state, Anzoátegui, but it's a northern city called Barcelona, just like the Spanish one.
Okay, so this is an interesting case because people remember Americans are, and I can say this without anybody getting offended. We don't even people don't even know where Caracas is. People don't even know. People don't know where Venezuela is, and
That's right.
we're talking about cities that themselves are ignored on the international scene. We see this footage of these these demonstrations and riots that are going down there. Most of them are in cities like Caracas, Maracaibo, um, and the more well-known areas. Um, but lately, it's become more of an issue where the entire nation is rebelling against the government. Since Venezuela officially went to the polls on Sunday. Why don't you go first, Carlos?
About what happened?
Yeah.
About the election? Yeah. Well, we see pictures of people going to the polls that are really concerning because it's very you see a low turnout in the pictures. You see a low turnout in different videos, and then you have very few high turnout coming from the official the government media, right? VTV or Telesur. And what happened was is if you see the history of the elections happening since the last election of Chavez in 2013, you see a decrease in popular support for the government, right? Beginning with the winning of Maduro, then with the parliamentary elections, and now we see a decrease. We should have seen a decrease in support in these last elections, but what we saw was a crazy number at 8 million people voting in the election, which caused some confusion because we had the president of the company that makes these machines for elections saying that those numbers are not true. We have even some people from pro government citing this guy. So there's still some confusion about what's happening. But nevertheless, we have a new constitutional assembly that took power a couple days ago, and now they're tasked with massive powers that are all for a single wing of the party of the government.
Okay, and I want to pass the discussion to you, Juan Carlo. I was watching yesterday a few posts. I was seeing you all day just going at it about the MUD, the MUD, the Mesa, they're the opposition. how ineffectual they are. But I want to talk about one thing that I heard. Delcy Rodriguez, who is the new president of the Constituent Assembly, apparently claimed that there's no hunger in Venezuela. How do you think that the government can manage this crisis when there are people pouring across every border looking for food?
Well, very easily. They control all the media, absolutely all the media. And the only thing that gets out of Venezuela is through social media on the internet. Although Venezuela has one of I was going to say one of the slowest. It's not one of the slowest. It's the slowest internet in the world. Um, and they manage all the media. As a matter of fact, what Carlos here was saying about the day of the election, one of the very important things they did was not to allow media or any cameras within 500 meters away from voting centers. They did not allow the media inside voting centers either. So all that we know is in this modern age where everybody has a cell phone, is people that just went by, took pictures and videos that are from far off, and you can tell basically that there's nobody standing in line. I mean, the voting places were completely desolate everywhere. And so, as a matter of fact, Maduro that day said that there 150,000 people had voted in a concert hall that is huge. And if you break it down, that would mean that two people were voting per minute uh, from 6 in the morning until 10 at night. And that's just basically absolutely impossible uh, uh, due to the size and all the videos that come out of that place. But anyway, they manage the media very well, and they actually uh, repress journalists that are on the street taking pictures. They take their equipment and they even put them in jail. They put in jail two yesterday. Um, so that's how they do it. They manage these things by portraying uh, a democracy to the world. Um, and that is basically what they're fighting. You know, it used to be very easy to say, hey, I'm now the big honcho in charge. I'm a dictator, and so everybody, screw off. But now, because of the politics they're playing the democratic card. They keep maintaining that they're a democracy, and they go through all the processes and all the legalities of a so-called democracy, while in the meantime they enforce their will on everything. They actually have all the institutions. All the institutions are absolutely under the hand of Maduro and Maduro alone, not everybody, not anybody else in the regime, but just Maduro. So he can actually call the Supreme Court and tell them, hey, this guy, I don't like him, put him in jail. Oh, and by the way, give him 30 years or give him 15 years. And, it's completely arbitrary like that. So they control everything. There's nothing anybody can do. In the meantime, I am absolutely sure, and I have been seeing it, that this is not an internal problem from Venezuela. This is an international problem being played in Venezuela, and the people are just basically held hostage by the problem.
So I wanted to ask you guys, Carlos, this Constituent Assembly, does this mean now that National Assembly it was elected 2 years ago, is that null and void? Are they basically completely emasculated now?
Legally, no. But like JC said, they're moving towards that. I mean, we have just 12 minutes ago, I just read a news that the Constitutional Assembly just took over the main parliament room, right, where the actual assembly reunites. So if you look into the news, it just happened right now, actually. The assembly finished the session, and now the Constitutional Assembly literally goes in with the National Guard and take over that room. even though they did it after the assembly was done with their session, it seems that they're moving towards that. And now with the extension of 2 years, remember, there was a constituent assembly done in 1999 to rewrite the constitution, and at that time it was nothing like this one, right? They had different groups and NGOs lobbied and together to write a new constitution in 1999, and that lasted about 2-3 months before the new constitution was approved and moved.
And they had a referendum.
Right, they had a referendum and everything. But anyways, and now this is what it seems to be, is that they're using this actual constitutional power, which is in the constitution. There's actually the constitution actually abides by this body, right, of calling for a constitutional assembly. But it seems that they're using it for things that go outside of the constitutional legalities, which includes subverting the actual assembly. Now, right now, I don't know what's going to happen, but it seems that it's going to go in that direction. And the first thing we saw was the extension of 2 years. Now they're asking for 2 years, even though Cabello says, "Oh, we're probably not going to do it for 2 years. We're going to do it for 6 months, but just to be sure, let's extend it for 2 years," right? So right now we have a constitutional assembly that's 2 years. Given the fact that we have a presidential election coming up next year, and then regional elections coming up at the end of the year, that's going to be iffy and troublesome once we get there.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer the first question from the chat from Dean. Do the people in Venezuela have access to the internet? I believe,
yes.
Juan Carlo, you answered that they do. It's just very slow connections. A question that he wanted to ask, is it like throttled or regulated a lot?
It's nationalized. I mean, I don't know if it was for JC. I'm sorry, but the main company that provides internet is CanTV, which was nationalized some years ago when Chavez was still alive, and ever since he nationalized, I remember when I was there still in 2010, 2009, 2009. I mean, the service went to crap. I mean, we used to have good service, right, in between, but ever since the nationalization, the services went down, and we had a slower and slower internet. So the service has gone to shit basically since the nationalization.
So
yeah, actually, everybody has a cell phone every day over there, man. Everybody, and although they have internet and it's very slow, the government does have, like they have here in the United States too. They have a war room where they're constantly monitoring the net, and they can tell who's sending what and what's coming in and what's coming out. And one of the things that they did of late is the CICPC, the Criminalistic Investigation Policing Body, published a pamphlet where basically telling, since the Constituent Assembly, basically telling the population that, hey, look, we're looking at you, we know who you are, we know what you're sending, and be very careful with what you do, because anything that you send that is contrary to the government, we're gonna go there and grab you. And actually, all throughout the countries, we have this places in all the highways where they stop you, they check you, and they check your phone. And if you have anything that is subversive against the government, they either take your phone or take you to jail, depending on what it is. So, that's a democracy that we have.
yeah, and this is really a reason that Americans should definitely be concerned. I mean, we talk about WikiLeaks in our country as if it's some sort of sordid affair where these and in some cases people believe these innocent politicians got hacked. Well, all of the things that did happen were the result, and they exposed a lot of our NSA tools. And we actually had a comment, another one from Dean, that this sounds pretty much like what happened in Cuba. I do remember that there was a certain there's a certain guy, I forgot his name, I think his name was Gross, who went to Cuba to expand internet access, and they basically threw him in a cave for like 2 years with no communication with his family. I got a question from Angel Muniz from Minnesota. He says, "Do people have access to cable or satellite television in Venezuela?"
Yeah.
You guys did go over that. You want to give a brief answer, Juan Carlo?
I let Carlos do that because he's younger and he probably lived there in the latter years, and I haven't. I know
Yeah.
that there is, but he can give
Yeah,
you.
yeah, there is cable, of course. I mean, they have DirecTV, they have another one called Intercable, um, but yeah, so they have access to it. Now there's problems with that access, right? I mean,
Right.
the prices have been skyrocketing because of inflation. Again, inflation is a topic, is a touchy subject, but it's been skyrocketing. We have the history of the global vision, right? It used to be a very anti-opposition. It was a cable network, just like CNN is, and you know the whole story, right? The shares got bought, and now they're very neutral, almost like pro government. They don't want to attack anybody, so yeah, there is channels. I mean, people watch HBO and Game of Thrones over there, so it's all good.
That's a big point though that I think that I need to accentuate is what he said. Yeah, there is, but I don't know how much of a percentage of the population really does have access due to the inflation. Probably very little in the upper echelons of society,
No,
which
no,
is
no.
the chavistas.
People find, trust me, people find ways to get to get in to get access to cable. People are very
Really?
creative. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
So we have this story that it's also happened in the aftermath of the election that I have seen the media report on a little, but maybe you guys have a little more information. I couldn't find any more today because I was kind of swamped at work. I was getting phone calls all day. This Operacion David. It says here. I'll give a little teaser. I'm free translating from El Nacional, but it says this Monday the official page of the National Electoral Council was hacked. The 31st of July, the same type of attack occurred just one day after the fraudulent elections for the National Constituent Assembly. Since this morning, the web portal was, I guess, stickered with an identification with Operacion David, Operation David in English, which was commanded by a certain Juan Cawaripano, if I pronounce his name correctly.
Mhm.
But
Caguaripano, yeah.
why don't you? Who wants to take a first swing at this? How about you, Carlos? What happened with this assault?
Are you talking about? Okay, hold on. Let me clarify. There's a couple of things here. Are you talking about the assault in Valencia when a group of military people rose up? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this guy did the same thing in 2014. People forget about that. Okay, this guy is he leads a small group of people, and he was caught rebelling in 2014 when Lopez, I think it was in 2014. Yeah, when Lopez started like calling people from the streets and calling for peaceful protests, and he was one of the military that rose up. Now the liberal media, including the opposition media, they get very excited about these things, even though they don't give you the historical context of this guy. This guy is not a huge commander of the highest rankings of Chavez. Okay, this guy is just a commander of a platoon in a southern in a in a central state of Valencia. Okay, and again, he's done it before in 2014. He's did it again. I don't think he has much support in the military, and obviously it was squashed by the government. So there's nothing to see there. I don't think it's not as big as people made it to be. Sure, it's important to talk about. It's something to mention, but as far as the support in the military for something like that, I highly doubt it. I mean, this is something that has been planned by the Chavismo for many years. This is the first thing that Chavez started doing, which was moving people in the military and making sure that your loyalists were in there in the highest rankings, including people from Cuba, including you know uh, just people loyal to him. So people talk about a lot of conspiracies around, even from people that have been in opposition longer than I even knew about Chavez. Um, that they just keep talking about this military, uprising, and people forget about the history, about how Chavez unilaterally have changed the high rankings of military, even after more than anything after the coup in 2002. So I don't think it's a big deal. JC might have another perspective on this.
Well, yeah. To
I
follow
have
up
a,
with Juan Carlo, I'm gonna pivot towards you. Since this happened,
uh,
what's
before you ask me something else, I want
yeah?
to
Go ahead.
say something about that because I do have a little different perspective on it. Um, People have to understand that there is 1,000 different, and when I say 1,000, that's probably a small number. There's 1,000 different fractions in Chavismo and within the opposition, right? And so all those are subgroups of the simplistic view of Chavismo versus opposition. Within the opposition, you have the very violent, the ones who overthrow the government violently, and then you have the moderates, and you have the ones that want to play the game of politics and democracy. You also have the resistance. Now, the resistance is made up of people that are neither Chavista nor opposition. They just want to get free. They just want all this shit to end, and so they don't care who rules. They just want the Chavismo off the table, and they just want to go to a just and democracy. So what happens now is that really the oversimplification now gets this third group, which is the resistencia. And so, but the opposition in general follows the political opposition, or the ones that play the democratic game and the political games, right? And those are the political leaders. Now, since the election happened, the political opposition, or the MUD, has been completely outrageously, irresponsibly, and I'm absolutely outraged at how silent they have been. They basically, after calling 128 days of blocking roads and multitudinary marches and asking for a revolt, a constitutional revolt, by the way, then all of a sudden, after the constituent assembly gets elected under this fraudulent context, they go silent, man. They just basically absolutely disappear from the internet. All right, and so here's the people on the net and everywhere going like, what do we do? Where do we go? What's going to happen? Right? And there is no word. Okay, only some rhetorical apparitions of these politicians just basically saying nothing. In that context, then this thing happens. There is a revolt in this fort in Valencia where this military guy leads this revolt. Now, what Carlos says is true. This has no major consequences as of now. However, while that was happening, the the resistance came and said, we have to support this military guy. They are doing what they're doing for us. We got to go out to the streets. Nobody's saying anything. Nobody's responding. Because, of course, because they answer to the politicians, to the call of what they call the leaders, right? So the resistance are the guys that are fighting the National Guard in the streets, throwing stones, blocking roads. They're the guys that have that you've probably seen them on videos with the shields. These are the resistance. And they're calling the people out to the streets, but nobody's doing anything. Okay? So I'm sending messages. I'm going like crazy, because like Carlos said, this guy has done it before. And even though it's not a general, he's doing something. And by the way, they said that the objective, the only and sole objective of Operación David, and that has to that is a rhetorical name having to do with David and Goliath, you know. And since they're very small and we're very small, we're fighting this monster. They called it David. So anyway, the objective of that action was to steal some weapons from that depot, and that happened. Now, while that was happening, while it was going on, the government came out in all the media saying, "Oh, we apprehended all these guys, and there's nothing going on." And actually, it's not the military; it's some paramilitary. But this
Right.
thing was still, and then videos were coming up everywhere, going with explosions and people in the streets and stuff. And so, everybody's scratching their heads. So there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Also, while that was going on, there were some military forces rebelling in Monagas, which is close to where we are from, and in El Táchira, and some of the army forces were rebelling also. So I see this stuff picking up momentum, but they're calling for people to go on the streets and block everything and give them a headache so that they can operate. Well, nobody answered the call, and I'm actually pissed off about it. And I'm pissed off, so pissed off that now I got enemies in the opposition and in the Chavismo too.
Well, that's one of the problems when you have a situation like this. I mean, the disadvantage of a society that, well, I mean, look at what's going on. You have a dictator who's consolidated all of the military support and very good international support from his allies, Russia and China, and I think you mentioned that last time, JC, as well as Cuba, of course. And the question now becomes, which is what I was going to ask you. I'm going to throw it to Carlos, but what do you think are the chances that Raul Castro or one of the other allies of Maduro would contribute military forces to putting down a rebellion in Venezuela?
Well, again, let's go back. Let's go back to history because this has happened before. 2014, Lopez calls a protest in the streets, and that starts weeks and months of protests, just like this year. And then I think it died out in about June of 2014. But those protests were mostly characterized by people blockading the streets. Okay, and that got really heated. I mean, we got video proof of military personnel throwing tear gas into apartments. You have children in apartments just receiving this tear gas. This is proof. This is not, people talk about, oh, you're talking about conspiracy and like propaganda from the right wing. Look it up. It's really it's true. So anyways, what happened there, there's also proof, there's also videos and pictures of military assistance from Cuba coming in to actually help suppress the blockades and suppress the opposition-led protest. But remember, like just what JC said, the opposition is multifaceted, just like the government is. And at that time, it was a group of the opposition that called those protests in 2014. Lopez got in jail. The blockades continued, but then it died out after a while. Now we have another section of the opposition leading these protests, and they were not really friends of the Lopez idea of doing protests in 2014, but now they are. So when we talk about military support from Cuba to Venezuela, this has happened before. Most likely will happen again. I mean, they've been doing military advising between the two countries, since Chavez. I mean, since early Chavez years. When Chavez started becoming closer to Fidel.
Right, and this is a topic I'll throw. I do have a different question coming up from the chat.
I want to throw some light into that too, if you let me,
Yeah, go
Ramon.
ahead.
Yeah, there's 900 generals in the United States Armed Forces. All right, just check this out. There's 900 generals in the United States. There is 2,200 in Venezuela. Uh, right.
I was in the army. I know what that means.
Yeah, right. So, and on top of that, it's actual, it's fact that, like Carlos said, the Cuban government is embedded in the armed forces in Venezuela. They are actually, look, people say Maduro is stupid. He's not stupid, but he ain't very smart either. And whatever is happening, the actual calls are being made by people that are not part of the government. And that's my take, and that's hearsay. But nonetheless, when you see the capacity, the intelligence of everyone in his cabinet, you see like there's no way that these people are the ones that are doing this. There's got to be something else that somebody else is calling the shot.
Well, I'm gonna break in here, and this is kind of me playing the Cold War historian and um, conspiracy theorist, Fidel Castro. And I'm not the type of person to throw moral judgments at every topic, but as much as Americans take flack for being imperialists, the Castro regime participated in uh, colonial wars of the Soviet Union in Africa too, in
Right.
Ethiopia and in Angola. So they've done things like this before. They have good expertise at that. Iran has good expertise at that. So we're not making things up. Dean and Angel were asking earlier, Angel, if there could be a civil war in Venezuela. I would fear that it would be a mop up, because you're talking about a number of countries that are on Maduro's side that have good experience at making these wars short and bloody. Um, and I don't know if you guys agree, but there is also a question right now, going back to the civil resistance, about this attorney general. Her name escapes me, but what
Luis
happened?
Ortega,
Yeah, go ahead. Could you explain the situation with her?
Luis Ortega Diaz. Oh boy, this is really a circus.
I
This
know.
is
I
really
know
a
why you laugh,
circus.
JC. I know why you laugh.
Yeah, this woman is a Chavista from the very beginnings of Chavismo, right? She was actually one of the forming members of the Chavismo, together with Chavez, and she was in the inner circle, and she was a hardcore, backwards uh, dictator like Maduro, just until the other day. And just the other day, when Maduro said that they were going to do a constituent assembly, like that, man, she turns into a Democrat defensor of humanity, you know? And the opposition, the political opposition that is, receives her with open arms. And she starts this rhetoric. She says she's still Chavista, but she's an ideological purist, and so she's going to defend the Chavismo that Chavez had in his heart. And so she basically distances herself from the Maduro government and starts throwing shit at it, right? And within this context, which I think is just more of a circus, everybody in the opposition receives her with arms open, and Maduro removes her after they won the constituent assembly. Just you know, took her out. Well, she says, by the way, so the general public should know, I don't really know what her motivation is. I know she's not an opposition person, and she's not a Democrat. To this day, I'm scratching my head, figuring out what the hell is she doing. but she's doing something. I just don't know what it is. But anyway, the other day she said that there were 36,000 files of of criminal corruption against the Maduro government. One of the biggest files that she had, or I hope she had, because by the way, she knew she was going to be removed. So I don't know if she took these files with her, or if she copied them somewhere, or if she safeguarded them. I hope she did. If she didn't, well, then it will be obvious that she's just playing a game. But one of the biggest files was about the corruption that had to do with the Odebrecht construction company, which started a bunch of different construction projects in Venezuela, and we're talking about multi-million-dollar contracts. And this construction company is involving corruption all over Latin America and the United States. And they are under investigation by the United States right now and by other countries as well. But anyway, one of the files contains, she said, contains corruption in the order of $30 billion. 30 billion that the Chavista government or people in the key people in the Chavista government participated in that. But I digress.
Going along that issue with the internal division in Venezuela, Carlos, do you think there could be some chance of an internal coup against Maduro, where one of the other Chavista leaders, I know that Diosdado Cabello is kind of one of these conniving figures. Do you think one of them could one day use this instability to move on him and force him out of power? Is this an issue of Chavismo, or is this an issue of Maduro the person?
Politically, I think that would be a bad idea before the presidential elections. I think what might happen is that when the presidential elections come, I think it's 2018. I think my personal belief, my personal opinion is that probably they're not gonna have Maduro run. They're probably gonna have Delcy Rodriguez. They're probably gonna have Cabello run. Because as I think what the Chavismo is doing right now is that they're trying to keep it together. They're trying to keep themselves unified, or at least look unified until the next election, because they know the numbers. They know that they have not been doing well in the elections. Besides the Constitutional Assembly, where the opposition was not involved, but they know that the numbers are not good compared to Chavez years. And I think what's happening, I think their best political calculation will be, let's stay together, let's do whatever we want with the Constitutional Assembly, whatever we deem that is necessary to do with it. But let's keep together. Let's not show any type of infighting until the election, because they want to make sure that they have all the political power they can to win the presidential election coming up. Not even presidential. I mean, we have the regional elections coming up. So for them, for something to happen in fighting in the Chavismo, I think will be politically hurting for the PSUV right now.
So I'm seeing a pattern myself, and there's somebody I wish I could have invited at least to be in the chat. The people that I see are commenting. We're all from the Anthony Logan community, even though I shared on other ones. So you guys all know who Nick Taylor is, and me and him would talk about Maoism, or I'd at least comment on his videos. And in a lot of these nations where communism, or in the case of China, Maoism took hold, the ultimate apex of it is that all the power is concentrated in this cult of personality, which was the case in Mao's China. And in his case, there was no son to take over, like in North Korea. So at the end, you had his wife and a gang of four basically wielding power. And that's what I'm seeing in Venezuela. There's a similar group of basically stooges, like Delcy Rodriguez, who I've seen her speak. This seems like this is Madame Mao reincarnated in Venezuela. It's actually kind of scary if you think about it, because Mao, in my opinion, was the most evil person who ever lived. And you could debate the facts, but um, he was enabled by people like that, people that would fit the profile of Delcy Rodriguez and the other lackeys like Cabello. And what you're saying is it's actually provoked a question from Dean again. Do you even trust an election process going forward, given what happened this past week?
Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead, Carlos. You take it.
Okay, I want to take it, JC. Sorry if I,
No, he'll get a chance. Don't worry.
But anyways, this is something I'm really, really eager to respond.
Me too.
All right, JC. I'll be short. I'll be short. Anyways, again, I'll begin with the historical perspective. Okay, we've seen this before. We've seen this movie before. 2016, 2006. Right? Remember that? And JC is nodding his head because he's talking about. He knows about what I'm talking about. The political calculation of the opposition on this constitutional assembly was basically, obviously, to say, well, don't vote, and that will be your way to vote in a way, right? Because obviously the majority of people don't support this, so don't vote in this election. In 2006, when Chavez won second term, the opposition called the election a fraud, right? And what happened was that the next year they had parliamentary elections, and their political strategy, the stupidest political strategy, and JC, I think you agree with me, is that well, it's a fraud. The electoral system is a fraud, so we are not going to participate into this fraudulent, electoral system. So they didn't run, and obviously the Socialist Party took over the whole country, right? Now, forward to today, right? What do we have as far as a political strategy for the opposition, right? Obviously, I'm guessing. I think there was a fraud. Sure, there's always a fraud. There's always. If we want to talk about election integrity, we can do 2 hours about the United States election integrity. Okay, but let's just digress on that. Okay,
Stay
let's talk
tuned to
about.
Bull Like a Leopard. I already have programming on it coming up. But
Okay.
go ahead. Yeah.
I will. I mean, I've been reading about electoral systems in the U.S. for a long time, and it's honestly, come on. Anyways, so let's talk about this. Having the, I think we all agree here that there's always going to be fraud. There's always going to be some type of mockery happening. But what has been proven to be true is that the system is not infallible. Okay, or at least it's not like it's always going to be towards one side. What we saw, for example, in 2003, 2004, with the referendum for the constitution in Chavez, where Chavez lost by 2%, and when we saw in 2015, when the parliamentary elections, the opposition party took over almost 2/3. There were only 2 seats left. They're 2 seats away from 2/3 of the parliamentary elections, and I think JC can expand on that. But what's happened is that this strategy that they're doing doesn't work. What they're saying, like, oh well, if let's not participate because this system is fraudulent. It doesn't work. So you have 2 options, right? To participate or not to participate in a fraudulent election, right? Let's look at history. What happened when you don't participate? The whole country is taken over a single party, and then what do? You're gonna keep protesting in the street and calling out like, oh my God, this government is horrible. It doesn't work. So yes, the elections are probably fraudulent, but I think, and I don't know if JC agrees with me, I think the best strategy right now is to go for it. Fuck it. It's fraudulent. What else? Let's do what we can, and let's put some people in the election and try to run some people and try to see if you win. We've won before. The parliamentary elections is an example. So again, I think the strategy that the opposition is taking, which is, oh, don't run, I don't think it's a good strategy. What do you think, JC?
I agree with a lot of what you said, but we disagree on that point.
Okay, go ahead.
And I've been pulling the hair that I have left, talking to people that from the opposition that thinks what you think.
Yeah.
It is true that the opposition has participated in all these elections before, and they have always cried fraud. Now, whether there was fraud or wasn't fraud in all the previous elections, I don't know. Okay, what is true is that they have been overseen by the international community, by ONGs, and everybody has certified them. And if there was any fraud, no fraud was ever proven. Okay, I think the situation is now. The situation is different now. It's very different. We now have experience. We now have 90% of the people in the opposition. A lot of the Chavistas are now without people. The people that are now with the Chavismo are the ones that are still getting some handouts from the Chavismo. Nobody else, the people, in general, are not backing up. The, they're not. They're not going to win any elections ever again. All right, unless the CNE, their electoral institution, runs the election. And so now that we know that, now that we have this company that runs the machine saying there was fraud, now that we have videos and pictures seeing that there was nobody in the voting centers, and they still say that they got 8 million votes, which, by the way, Chavez, in his best election ever, when everybody, even people that today are in the opposition, were back then with Chavez. Even back then, he got 8 million, 8 million plus, and so now Chavismo is saying that they have 8 million plus. So you know, the CNE is putrid, okay? And so the people in the opposition that in previous elections have gotten governorships and have gotten certain key positions politically, those people, many of them have been removed or neutralized from their positions.
Yep.
Many of them are in jail today. Okay, so to say that now that we know this institution is absolutely corrupt, now that we know that we have a dictatorship, now that we know that we have a military, a government kept there by military force and only military force, and now that we know that all of our political leaders are in jail, now it's still going to go to another election where they're going to elect certain opposition members. By the way, and let me say this, and let me piss off on camera a lot of Venezuelans out there that are in the opposition, okay? There is people in the MUD, opposition members, that are the highest ranking political people in the MUD that are absolutely corrupt. And it's not because
that's true.
I say it. That's not because I say it, okay? It's because it's a fact that has been proven time and time and time again. And the ones that are the most corrupt are the ones that always end up without a scratch. They are also the ones that end up in closed-door meetings with the Chavismo. And they are the ones that, by the way, already said that they're going to go to elections. No matter what the MUD says, they're going to elections. And they are the ones that are absolutely sure that they are going to get governorships and key political positions in the Chavista government. So, seeing all of these, you still have people like Carlos, although I'm sure Carlos has that position, but I'm sure that still at night he scratches his head going like, am I right? Is this what we should do? And that's the predicament of every Venezuelan out there. It's like, should we go to election? Well, if we don't go, then we'll be completely out of the game. And the same thing that has already happened is going to continue happening. But if I don't go, then I'm left with nothing. And I want to tell the Venezuelan people, whoever is listening to this today, you have nothing. You have nothing now. You have no weapons. You have no political power. You ain't got shit. The only thing you have is your own is balls and your arms and your legs, and the only thing you can do is go out there and make it hell for bullets. Yeah, they can kill you, but if everybody, all the millions of Venezuelans, go out on the street at one time, like they did in Ukraine, and they don't go back into their house, they just stay day and night out there. There is no bullet in this world that can reach you. Okay, but they don't. But the Venezuelan people, I have words for this, but the Venezuelan people are peaceful people. They don't want a bloodbath, although they got 26,000 deaths every year by homicide committed by Chavistas, which are the ones that have the weapons, but they don't want a bloodbath. They want a free and democratic solution to all these things. And they don't want to grab their balls and say, hey, we ain't got shit, and whatever we got, we're going to have to go get it in the streets because the politicians are going to play politics. The politicians are not going to say, let's subvert the government and let's just go on. They're not going to call for a revolt. All right? And I'm sorry, it pisses me off. It really pisses me off.
Well, I mean, this is something. I mean, you guys will agree with me. There's very few countries, at least around the globe, that have earned their independence without resorting to force of arms, and even then there's a revolution. I know people who were in Russia during the fall of the Soviet Union, and there's plenty of cases where you do have people power. I remember reading about the same thing in the Philippines, which is a not socialist country, where that happened in 1985. And like Juan Carlos said, people will have to decide at some point, is our freedom worth sacrificing for? I want to direct the discussion, first of all, to a couple questions, and then I'm going to switch to a couple related topics. The first question that I saw was from Dean, talking about inflation. And unfortunately, Gabriel, who was talking a lot about it in our sessions, he really had a lot to say about it. But I went on to xe.com. It says, and this is the official exchange rate, which do you guys trust more, the electoral system or the official exchange rate? Feel free to disagree.
Either.
So none of them.
So apparently, as of today, the Bolivar is about 9.8 cents. It went down from, or actually, yeah, so it went down from at 12 o'clock, it was at 10 cents. And let's look at the 2-year period here. And it tanked from 15 cents in 2016 to, officially it's 9.5 cents as of today. That is probably one of the, it's almost like those people that believe that there's that there's really women on Ashley Madison and that they're not fake profiles. It's really, this is why there's people like me that are kind of unfortunately looking like conspiracy theorists. This is the government in Venezuela basically fixing prices, and it's not a hard mechanism to think about. All they have to do is declare, well, we're going to set this rate, and all the exchange centers, the official exchange centers, will exchange this at that rate. However, those that are in the know, that need to get their hands on the dollar, as Gabriel said, you'll have these officials, and they'll have connections to people in the various ministries where they have access to foreign exchange, and they're the people you can get dollars from. You go to an official exchange place, you might be able to get a limited amount of currency for the official rate, but it's chump change for what you need in Venezuela. What was the other question that was asked?
Can I say something about that, Ramon?
Yeah, chime in.
Yeah, it's much worse than what you just said. Much more worse. I want to give everybody a web page. Check out the web page of Dollar Today.
Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, good thing you brought it up.
Yeah, dollar today with one L. Anyway, the Venezuelan government runs on dollars and only dollars. Okay, the money that since they kill all the industry, all right, the the only income that they have is due to oil, and oil is paid by in dollars. So they get all these dollars, the government, through the PDVSA, which is the oil company. They get these dollars, and they actually locked up the money exchanges. So if you want to go to Venezuela and you need to buy bolivares, which is the money over there, bolivar. If you want to buy a bolivar, well, you cannot. You cannot grab your dollars and go to a money exchange or to a bank and exchange the money to bolivar. You can't. Okay. So people scratch their heads and say, well, if I want to go there, what do I do? Well, you have to sell your dollars in the black market. And that page that I gave you from Dollar Today is the page that sets the price of the black market of the dollar.
Yeah, I just tuned in and looked at it, and it is. I can tell you, if I can shill for dollar today, I don't think they'll care because enough people look at it. But this looks professional. I see the right now the Bolivar is 16,480 to $1. So that gives you an idea. And 19,446 to the euro. It also says here that Venezuela has an external debt of 120 billion, $204 million, if I'm reading this correctly. And this is actually, I mean, this is like hour by hour updates. This is something that, I believe some Venezuelans built in order to really give, because financial information is important. If people don't know where to get, I think they also do. Carlos, is this true? Do they do those medicine exchanges on it too, and like the where people are telling when the medicine is coming in from overseas? Is that dollar today, or is that a different website?
No, it's not a website. It's just a personal experience I had. By the way, dollar today, I don't vouch for that. I have no opinions on that.
So yeah, there's a lot of people who believe that that's another thing. Like, obviously, me and the two gentlemen in here, we kind of have different I'd say observations of the issue here. Obviously, because these two are from Venezuela, but there are a lot of people that criticize dollar today because it is enhancing the black market and therefore widening the crisis. So it's a controversial issue with a lot of people that believe that it had a hand in just worsening the crisis and undermining the economy there. But
otherwise you cannot get otherwise you cannot exchange.
Well, that actually brings like the conflict to the head, which is what's more important, that you have an economy that's cooperative, or you have an economy where consumers can find the information that they need, and that's kind of the difference in approaches between the people that are running this site and the Venezuelan government. Because if you believe the what the Venezuelan government is publicizing, they claim that their programs, the misiones that they're running, they're going to distribute whatever wealth is in the country in order to help people. Well, dollar today is actually like the reverse of that, kind of. It's like they're like, well, who are you kidding? We're just going to give you, the market as it is. Which that's actually not why I brought it up. But I think it's an interesting discussion. I wish Gabriel was here to kind of put his perspective on it, because I think he monitors it a lot more closely than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I would like. I mean, again, I haven't heard a compelling argument for dollar today on the basis of statistics. I mean, I honestly, I mean, I haven't even gone too deeply into it. So I'll admit I probably haven't done enough research. But I mean, you see some fluctuations that are quite questionable in certain. I'm not saying that the dollar is super low as the government it is. I'm not saying that, but I'm not also vouching 100% for the dollar today, because I've seen fluctuations that has no causes in the market. Obviously, you have movements in the market. You have your how's it called, international reserves moved to Venezuela. You have some expenditures on debt, right? So all these things actually, contribute to the inflation or deflation of the monetary value of your currency. But I have a lot of questions about certain movements in dollar today,
So
where the currency goes up and down, and there's no movements in the market. I mean, it's just,
I'd I'd like to respond to that. I think I understand what Carlos is getting at. One of the issues with a site like this is that we're talking about a market that it's kind of a traditional market. It's based a lot on rumors and possibly manipulations based on information that people feed from you know uh, you know basically the marketplace. And the question is, and this is something that the Venezuelan government itself claims is a cause of the crisis, and you could take it for what it's worth. They believe that speculators are manipulating these rates in order to aggravate the crisis. In some cases, in order to get the best price for whatever goods that they're selling or whatever currency that they're selling. And there are, I mean, things like that have happened before. It's not like it's never happened anywhere else. So I think I want to save that topic for a different day. Maybe if we can get Gabriel to come back.
Oh,
What's that?
I said, oh.
Yeah. No, I mean we could probably go. Yeah, all these topics we could go for hours on, but
I want to say something about it,
Yeah, sure.
if you allow. Yeah, it's very simple. It's like I was saying, and well, it's not very simple. Dollar today is a black box. Okay, I don't know how the hell they get the exchange rate, and they change every day. Every day they change. So it's like Wall Street, right? So I don't know what works and what algorithm they're running, but what I do know is this: if if you are a Venezuelan business person, all right, and you want to import something so that you can sell because they don't make it in Venezuela, so you got to buy it from outside. And say that you get it from Amazon, all right? So you buy something, you get a cell phone in Amazon, a cell phone, $400, $700, okay? You take it to Venezuela, and after you do all the work to bring it to Venezuela, what do you think you're gonna sell it for? You're gonna have to sell it for more than $400 or $700, right? And get a profit. So the moment you try to say, okay, you scratch your head and you say, okay, what can I buy in Venezuela with this money? And so you make that exchange rate in your head, and then what ends up happening is that what you see in dollar today is the exchange that is equivalent to that acquisition power in Venezuela. So basically, they do it's very simple. If you ask somebody what's the price of rice today in Venezuela, and you translate it to whatever dollar today says, well, it's the same price of rice on here. All right. So whatever the prices are over there in bolivars, it's the same as the price of rice of things are here. The problem is that over there they're not making that kind of money because the economy is in shambles. So, and that's where inflation comes in. So, I don't either, like Carlos, I don't trust or distrust the numbers, but I know that they're not far away from what should be. However, the exchange that the exchange rate that the government has is laughable. It's ridiculous. And I challenge anybody to get money at that rate. Go ahead.
Well, that's really I kind of made an analysis on that. Juan Carlo, can you turn your speaker down because I think I can hear myself. But I do think that it is a little more accurate to base things off of word of mouth, as ridiculous as it sounds, than to base it off a price control mechanism like the government does. And we have things like that happen here in the U.S. In a number of industries where there's price fixing, but
Wall Street.
What's that?
Wall Street.
Well, yeah, Wall Street. There's plenty of times. I mean, the Federal Reserve interest rates.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
I mean, if I really wanted to, and over here we don't have as much of a necessity, and if I have horrible credit, I can just get a loan for an extortionate rate. But that's kind of where we talk about not just Venezuela, but how much the government can even control a market or not, whatever market it is. I do want to. Angel did ask this question. It says, "Does Venezuela support gay marriage or the LGBTQ community at all?"
All right.
Who wants to tackle that one?
I'll take it.
Okay.
All right. So let me just give me a second. Okay. So there is a chapter on this book that talks about the history of women's rights in Venezuela from 1998 to 2010. The book is The Revolution in Venezuela. Now, this is a great chapter because it talks about the advances of, and I'll get to LGBT right now, but it's connected, okay? So, women's rights in Venezuela had advanced, had great advancements starting in the early 90s, okay? And there's a couple of organizations that were independent from the government and had people from the left and the right that constantly lobbied the parliament to pass pro women's rights legislation. Okay, this is called Ina Mujer, I think it was called the name of it, and this has been a growing movement of women's rights. And what happened was, in the late 90s, before Chavez was elected, there was an influx of activists on the LGBT side of things. Okay, and they call it the sexo diversos. Okay. And they are basically, vouching for, gay marriage and certain rights on Venezuela. So what happens is you have this movement of people, of women and people in the LGBT community lobbying the government, and actually they were part of the reform of the Constitution in 1999. Where they were the main organization that lobbied for specific articles in the Constitution for equal rights, and also in the language of the Constitution. Right now, you talk about like masculine language and feminine language in the Constitution. If you read it, it's kind of interesting topic to talk about. But anyways, so throughout the 90s and later in Chavez era, you had this organization working closely with the government. Chavez, late in the late 2000s, early 2010s, he started kind of like taking the movement to himself and to the party, right? And he created the Ministry of Women's Rights and Equality, right? And what happened is, like, the person who was leading the main activist organization became the minister, okay? And what happened is, like, people started saying, oh, the socialism was the actual was such a precursor for many women's rights in the Venezuela, and that's completely false. I mean, if you look at the history of the women's rights, so over the course of Chavismo, there has been pushed for a certain legislation, and they call it there's a book, a legislative book that talks about I don't know how to get in English, but it's Control Penal. It's like
the penal code, yeah.
Penal code, okay, and that basically enforces the law on the women's rights and LGBT community. So, anyways, they have been lobbying the government for a long time. They've had a couple of things move forward, including rights for women to for certain social security benefits on the women's side. But regarding the sexo diversos, regarding the LGBT community, they have not been able to actually pass legislation to approve gay marriage. And I think, and you talk about left wing or pro-left in the U.S. and they talk about socialism is pro-gay, is pro-LGBT, and look at the Venezuelan government, and are they LGBT? Completely not. And I think the reason is not necessarily in a capitalist or a socialist thing. It's a cultural thing, And CJ can talk more about this. Obviously, he's older than me, so he knows more about the culture of Venezuela. But there's a certain machismo culture in Venezuela, since I was born, and everybody knows it. It's a thing. So for politicians to actually pass legislation pro-gay, over the course of Chavismo has been difficult politically because of the culture of Venezuela, right? So right now, legislatively, probably you can find, speeches of Venezuelan government officials talking about probably pro-gays, but as far as legislatively, there has not been a push. There has not been a push for gay marriage.
So that goes for both the opposition and the government?
Yeah, I haven't heard. I don't know if CJ has heard. I haven't heard from the opposition yet, either on that side. Probably they have. I'm not familiar with it.
I'm sure they have, but I haven't heard anything. But what I should say about this particular subject is, um, we are a Catholic country. Enough said.
Yeah.
It's a cultural thing,
Yeah.
and regardless of what's in the books, which just like we have 2,200 generals, I mean, we have books full of laws and full of beautiful rhetoric, that it doesn't matter. The public ministry, which is the one that pursues the justice and is in charge of investigating crimes and stuff, has 98%. The word escapes me right now, but it's 98% of cases go unpunished. So if that is true for hardcore cases, imagine how they enforce whatever laws are to bring social justice. Now, Chavez began this social reforms, and like I was telling you last time, nobody really knows what was in Chavez's heart. People claim one thing or claim another. What is true is that when he got in, whether it was to buy people or whether it was because he truly believed this stuff, he did try to make a lot of social changes, and he enacted a lot of social changes. And at the very beginning, things seemed to be going very well for the populace, but they took a crash. I mean, Venezuela is much worse off in every aspect. Not in most aspects, not in some aspects. In every aspect, Venezuela has just crashed, and that has to do a lot of with Chavez's later years, and even got worse with Maduro.
Yeah, I think it's important for Americans to think, and I guess it's a good question from Angel because it's good to compare, but a lot of the problems that we have in America in terms of social problems, you're hearing now of these parents that are raising their kids without a gender or something. I think it's less of an issue in Venezuela, things like that, than raising your kid without food, raising your kid without or raising your kid without sanitation, and we think of these basic. I mean, we're fortunate to live in a country where, by and large, without of course there was the Hurricane Katrina and whatever, and issues of the Flint water crisis where there's major failures of the system, but I think in Venezuela this issue of sexual minority rights is low on the totem pole, also because of the culture issue. I know I work with a lot of people from other parts of Latin America, Dominican Republic, and all that, and for them, the Catholic culture is strong enough that those types of things, they're if it's an issue for somebody, it's not an open issue. Um, so
However, I'll tell you this though. I think women in Venezuela, by far, although we are a machista country, where machismo is the rule, I think women in Venezuela have a very good position socially in the culture.
I
Women
agree.
are I would venture even out to say that more than here.
So would you say compared to the other countries of, I mean, you had in Peru, I remember um, there was a woman who ran for president a few years back, did very well. Compared to the rest of Latin America, you'd probably say that it's above average in terms of women's rights. And here in America, I think that this is becoming more of a controversial topic, because it depends who you ask. If you ask somebody, in recent years we have become polarized here, but I think in Venezuela and in Latin America the fault lines are sort of different. You're not seeing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, either of you guys, this battle of the genders, this battle of the sexual minorities is not as big of an issue because there are problems that are much more of a greater magnitude than these cultural wars that Bill O'Reilly used to talk about.
That's right. That's right.
Can I direct the Dean had a question earlier. Is there religious persecution of any type in Venezuela, whether it's the government of religion or whether it's the church of other religions? And is that a factor right now in the crisis?
Uh, on my experience, again, I lived in Venezuela until 2010, and I obviously have all my family over there. I don't, I don't, I don't see any persecution at all. I think in general, I think we're very open people, even though obviously we're mostly Catholic, but we seem to be okay with many things. We seem to be okay with like evangelists, singing and dancing around. We seem to be okay with Muslims having their community if they want to have their community. I mean, we don't care. I don't think, I mean, if you ask any tradition of Venezuela, it's like they don't really care. They don't have such strong emotions as you see here in the US, where like you have these tensions with Muslims community and
Yeah, that's not an issue.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
not an issue.
I'd say that I can probably say that in Latin America, and I used to work with a lot of people from El Salvador. The Catholic Church has gone through a number of phases. During the Cold War, there was this liberation theology phase where the church itself was kind of a political battleground between different philosophies of whether the church was on the socially progressive or socially conservative side of the Cold War. And then I know from the people that I've met, these immigrants from El Salvador and Honduras, that some of the more fundamentalist Protestant sects are making huge inroads into Central America. But I think Honduras isn't really, because Honduras until recently wasn't as in need of these missions. If you couldn't correct, I mean, Guatemala, we have missions to Guatemala all the time. And
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Venezuela. Remember, I mean, Juan and Gabriel, they both told me in the '90s and before that, Venezuela was kind of an economic boom country. It wasn't what we're talking about today. So you didn't have this massive need for religious missionaries going down there. I don't know if that's changed. I don't think it's really been a topic in the news as much as what we've been talking about. But yeah, I think the question about religious persecution has been a no. Dean's also asking this question, and I think the answer is pretty obvious. What about the education system? Are they indoctrinating the children into this philosophy of Chavismo?
Check out YouTube.
So Dean, go check out. What would you say, like Venezuelan health class, or maybe what? Share a video if you guys are on your computers. Share a video to me, and I'll try to post it in the chat if you can, and if you have time. Um, And if you can get on the chat, I think actually I don't know if you guys can post on the chat, but I can. Um, but anyway, yeah, there's a couple topics, and I know that Carlos went to do a little of that research, but I want to get your reaction, Juan Carlo, while he's off the.
I can tell you that we have lots of traditionally. What happened is that you had public schools, and then you had private schools. The private schools were mostly running by the Catholics, and so if you wanted to go, if you were from middle class and upper echelons of society, you had enough money. I'm talking about before Chavez. You had enough money to send your kids to Catholic schools, which were private. You had to pay. The rest went to public schools. Uh, well, under Chavez, the private schools continue operating, but now they were under very tight scrutiny of the revolution. And little by little, throughout these past 19 years of Chavismo, they have infiltrated into even to the private sector, and so that now they mandate exactly what children, uh, the books that children are gonna use. And when you check some of those books, I mean, the revolutionary rhetoric is out of this world. It's really something to see. And in many public schools, they actually make it a part of their daily bread to have children, chant together these rhetorical things, pro-revolution and pro-Chavez, and magnifying the personality of Chavez. And even today, I mean, Maduro couldn't do anything without constantly bringing out Chavez, as if Chavez was almost looking down constantly on the people. And that they try to instill in children from a very early age. And it's gotten worse in the past 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so
Yeah,
yeah, do you want to chime in, Carlos? We're still on
yeah.
that.
Going along the lines with the education system. I mean, remember, um, like he said, we had public and private education. The public education was not in the best shape before Chavez came in. So it's something to note. And so there's a difference, right? When we talk about education, we have to be specific, right? We have the traditional system of education where you have, publicly funded schools, standard schools, K to 12, and then you have the private schools, K to 12, and university, and same thing with public schools, right? Generally, the public education and higher education, talking about public universities, have a very good uh, have a very good image, mainly because people that graduate from there, I mean, they're really really professionals. I have friends from a couple of public universities that, I mean, they get poached from different countries, mainly the medical sector. We have a great medical programs in public universities. We've always had it. It's not only Chavez, but we always had great education in Venezuela. And right now, since the doctors are not being paid as much as they used to, countries like Spain come to the graduations and literally poach students from these public universities because they're really really good. I mean, their programs of training are really really good, because you got to get certain hours as a doctor, but they really are good doctors. So that's kind of like a background before Chavez, right? Now, when we talk about a Chavez time, we have to mention obviously the obvious elephant in the room, the misiones, right? Mission Rivas, Mission Robinson, with different, you know, angles. Again, these missions are just an expansion of their expenditure, and to reach far, you know, people outside of the city, people in the barrios in a way. And so what happened is like alphabetismo, which is knowing how to read and write, went down in the beginning of the 2000s. Because obviously he put schools on far barrios, right? Obviously, it's about the people are going to be able to write and read. Now, what happened with the other missions, misiones, was that he has missions for high school, he has missions for primary school, and then he has missions for universities. So it's kind of like a quasi universities. You know, you have these missions where people get trained to be doctors in 3 years, where in a traditional system you have to do 7 years of medicine training, right? But anyways, what happened, coming back to your question, just to give you a kind of background, is what happened is like these missions have become, and this is coming, by the way, everything I said you can check online, and this is, you can check evidence from people from the missions themselves. Again, even from the misiones from for women, and misiones from education. I have family that went to misiones. Okay, I mean, I have personal secondhand account of this. When you can talk about education, it's like what CJ is saying, is that these missions have become an arm of the government, an arm of the party, where these people, part of the educational curriculum is a huge socialist dump of information and of history, right? They talk about, they frame history in a very socialistic way that goes these people ended up becoming militants of the party. Again, this is proven. You can see videos on YouTube, like CJ said, this is all proven. So you have little kids chanting socialist chants, and then you have higher education curriculums that are highly socialistically educated. You can also call it anti-imperialist educated. I think we mentioned a little bit of it last time we talked about. And these things are part of it is factually correct, but the problem is the framing of these things, right? You got these people with this framing of like, you gotta be, if you're not with the party, you're a traitor kind of deal, right? If you're not with the party, you're not with Venezuela. Yeah, so it's just like, it's not like it's a bad history, because I'm sure they talk about Allende, I'm sure they talk about Guatemala in the banana wars, I'm sure they talk about that, but it's just the constant framing of me against them kind of deal, and there's only one party, and you can only be loyal to one party. And this goes across the board in all misiones, right? Including medicine. Part of the medicine, if you look at the medicine missions, which are the most popular missions, and I think, again, I'm against Chavez all you want to do, but you have to recognize what the good has done, right? So the misiones on the medicine, they have a portion of it, which is a community education of decisions made for the missions and the medicine, right? And then they have a community portion of it, and all the misiones have a community portion of it, including the comunas, including the participatory democracy system that Chavez implemented. But they all have a very strong, like CJ say, a very strong leaning towards, patriotism equals PSUV equals the party, not equals socialism, it equals the party, So it's true.
I wanted to make that distinction right there that you mentioned at the end, Carlos, and probably Ramon. We can talk about this afterwards. But there's a big difference between socialism and Chavismo. Okay, mm-hmm. So to say that that what they inject is socialism, it's not. I don't agree with that. What they inject is the rhetoric, the anti-imperialistic rhetoric, to treat Chavez as a god. And as a matter of fact, they actually, in some places, they worship him with a statue and candles and everything. They call him our father. And they have even made versions of the Our Father to Chavez.
That's true.
And, so it's almost the man is an idol, and so is the revolution, and so they encase all this education within this rhetoric, and that's the spin they give it. So it's very much like Mao did, or they do in North Korea. It's very much like that.
Right, and I mean, this was one of the topics where I did have I have a philosophical disagreement, more with JC, but probably with you too, Carlos, where I do believe that socialism as a value system does end up leading to things like this, these things that end up becoming called corruptions of socialism. I see them as innate traits of them because you need to communalize society and instill them with the same values. I don't think that it's unique to socialism. So you can have the same type of behavior in some of these cult societies like Scientology. It's not like we can just say all the evil of the world is in socialist societies, because we see some of the same traits in other places. So the issues that are being brought up by that question about the education system is how open-minded is it? Because some of the information that they're talking about, which I'm assuming, like Carlos was alluding, they're talking about the issues of the Anaconda Copper Company in Chile, and exploitation of Latin America, the Banana Wars. What's that guy's name? Smedley Butler, the American who. And for some of you, this is going to sound like nonsense because you haven't been watching Telesur. With like some of us, I've watched a little of their stuff, and it kind of reminds me of some of my reading list from back when I used to cut school and actually like read stuff. But this like conflict over whether this is because of socialism or because of Chavez, I think is going to continue to be a topic. It already is a topic, by the way. It's not just you guys, or right. It's a topic in Venezuela. It's a topic around the world, and we're going to get to. I'm shifting the topic here, if you guys will allow me, to the international reaction to what's going on. Now, I have before me, and I can't share it because it's on my tablet, but this is from Forbes magazine. It says Venezuela defaults on Russia. Is Goldman Sachs next? Do you think that any of these countries, which are, Russia is not run by morons, will they dump Venezuela at some point when they can't use them anymore?
I don't, and like I said before, and forgive me, Carlos, I'll take this right
That's
away.
Okay.
Like I said before, I really think that the problem in Venezuela is not so much a Venezuelan problem, but an international bag of interests that are pushing and pulling every which way, fighting out for the control of the country. Whatever the revolution did, and whatever the rhetoric is against the evil empire of the United States, they just we definitely had a hegemony enacted by the United States in Venezuela and all of Latin America all throughout the life of the country, and they use that and they turn it into a very useful rhetoric to wake up the poor masses, and they basically say, look, your situation is such because of the evil empire. And so once they had all those people in their bag, they turned over and sold out the country to the Chinese and the Russians, just the same as they had previous governments of the right had done with the United States. Only that now that we're starving and we weren't before, okay, or at least a large portion of the country. But so that issue is definitely an international. There is an international circus going on. I think that Russia has a lot to lose if they let Russia or China. They have too much investment in the country, just like they have in California, to just let it go. I don't think they'll let it go. And as a matter of fact, I think that the things are being fought out right now precisely because they're not going to let it go. At the same time, I see certain games being played by the evil empire, that as long as they keep getting the oil from Venezuela, which, by the way, they have an embassy there, they have normal relations, they have all this rhetoric and all this shit flinging at each other, but at the end of the day, the spice keeps flowing and everybody's happy. So I don't think United States is going to jump on against the regime. I don't think they're going to send the Marines like they are constantly telling everybody. And that's how they route up the masses by telling them, the gringos are coming, the gringos are coming. Well, they have been saying that for 19 years. The gringos are not coming, you know. As long as the oil spigot is open, everything will be all right. And Trump just said that, well, we might cut oil, and then a few days later, then he came out and said, well, we're not going to cut the oil. We just stopped exporting oil derivatives to you. And so, but in any case, they haven't done neither. All right. And I don't think they're going to, because I think there is a certain handshake being done under the table by all these countries. And
Right.
so right now, whatever the political rhetoric is, right now there are 40 countries, of course, from the upper echelons of countries in the world, saying that um, they will not accept the Constituent Assembly. Even though they have said that, nothing's happening. They've been saying that forever. The UN keeps on saying that they are worried, they are preoccupied, they are studying the issue. They call for a dialogue and this soft handling of the politics. And basically, I think we are on our own.
Yeah, I want to before Carlos, you can respond in a second, but this is one of the issues where if any of you know my approach, I'm definitely not an opponent of Donald Trump, but I am an opponent of some of his cabinet picks, especially, which is why I criticize him. And his Secretary of State, as you probably know, was the former CEO of ExxonMobil. And I said that from the beginning, this is one of the reasons that you don't trust anybody that gets elected. They're going to, first of all, they're under tremendous pressure to conform, even if you believe in what they think.
That's right.
Second of all, once that person, it's not like you can just replace the Secretary of State anyway, and they're not going to replace the Secretary of State over Venezuela. And the United States is not going to cause an international crisis over Venezuela. They are going to take the path of least resistance unless, and Carlos has talked about it, there is a military interest in it, which, of course, Mr. Trump, another reason that I criticize him, I'm a small government. I'm always for cuts across the board. He could use this military budget somewhere, which I'm hoping he won't do in the near future, at least not for a reason like this. There could be an intervention, but I don't see an intervention happening militarily as of right now. Would you like to respond, Carlos, about Putin and these other issues of intervention?
Well, we have already statements from the Russians back in the Constitutional Assembly. We have, obviously different countries against the Constitutional Assembly. I think, again, coming to your original question, will there be people dumping Venezuela? I don't think so. I agree with CJ in many ways, where Russia has interest in Venezuela, and even US has interest in Venezuela. So it doesn't work for them. I see movements from the State Department that are going in the direction of getting other countries in Latin America to push Maduro in certain ways diplomatically. You have the head of the CIA saying that he's working with Colombia and Mexico to do some diplomatic maneuverings, whatever that is, to, I don't know, do something in Venezuela. He's very vague about it. You have Secretary of State Rex Tillerson saying very incendiary things about Maduro, very interventionist talk about Maduro. I don't think major things are going to happen, and I am honestly, I'm like more than 80% sure that there's not going to be a military intervention because of the amount of foreign policy maneuvers that Chavez did previous to his death. He made one of the things he made was to unify a group, little groups of country by giving them special trade deals on their petroleum trades, right? You have different countries that have interest in Venezuela keeping, whatever these trade agreements, and just in Petrocaribe is one, Petroandes is another one. They want to create a Petroamerica, which involves as many countries as you can in South America. But basically, what it is trade agreements where the countries can buy petroleum 50% cash, and then the rest at 1% of interest rate, depending on the current price of the oil, right? If it's a high price, then those are the rates. But if it's a low price, then they have higher interest rates on the payments of the petroleum. So again, based on the current situations and current connections with different Latin American countries, it will be a mistake diplomatically for U.S. to do anything militarily overt actions, although they already admitted that they're doing covert maneuvers politically with other countries.
Yeah, and I'd like to say about the oil issue. There's a lot of people that talk about oil being a good resource for a country to have. You have to remember that the other country that I already mentioned that Cuba intervened in the Cold War was Angola, which has become a hellhole because of oil and diamonds. And I was actually talking with a colleague at work. By the way, everything I do on this channel, it's not like I go around work and talk to people about Venezuela. It's kind of like everybody here, I think you guys will agree, we kind of have to live and follow this crisis as if we're like in our own world here, and then follow the crisis from afar. You guys probably have a much harder time doing it because you know people there. But he was asking me, because he'll ask me once in a while about a topic like this. He'll be like, yeah, so you think some of these resources are actually a burden on a country? Well, in Venezuela's case, it's absolutely becoming evident that instead of using the oil in order to make the society more sophisticated, they've made it into an entirely oil-dependent country, similar to I mean, there's countries like that in the Middle East all over. And you're seeing the type of society that they have in Qatar, which is one of the fortunate ones, where basically the oil is what is the only mode of expression which the entire economy has. All the other industries, Gabriel was talking about it. I think both of you talked about it too. All the other industries were basically clear cut in order to satisfy this platform that President Chavez had. And that's how we have this crisis today. And like Carlos is saying, that they're distributing the spoils to all these trade partners. Could I direct your attention to a little, this is kind of, I don't know if you guys will find it amusing, but there's a certain Jeremy Corbyn. Are you guys familiar with him?
Yeah.
From the United Kingdom. And I have an article here, if my tablet will work, where it says he's under pressure from people in his own party to take a firm stance on the Venezuela crisis. And here we go. It's from the Daily Mail. It says people within his own party are pressuring him to respond to Venezuela. Do you guys remember? I remember, because I'm from here. Sean Penn used to go down there all the time and party and talk to people. When did you think that there was this kind of change in attitude where people didn't think Venezuela was this model state anymore?
I mean, CJ, if you want to take it on, I'll take it after GJ.
I would say that, like I told you before, I think Chavez and the revolution came at a moment in Venezuela's history where everybody was disenchanted with the 50 previous years of democracy after the dictatorship of Perez Jimenez, which was, by the way, the most awesome dictator we have ever had. Although he imprisoned anybody that dissented, he absolutely built Venezuela. He built Venezuela. All the infrastructure that now stands in Venezuela was built by him. And he was a futurist and a visionary. But anyway, I digress. So once democracy came, then a lot of the, by the way, a lot of the actors today in the opposition, or the oldest actors in the opposition, which are also the most powerful, they were participants in those 50 years of democracy, right? And they had all these shady deals with the United States and with Europe. And so the governments of those 50 years were absolutely corrupt. And like you said, the oil and all the mineral riches that Venezuela has were being siphoned outside the country, while they, they got a lot of the wealth, and while the people starved. So that's how come we have Chavez. Chavez came because all of a sudden this guy comes up with all this rhetoric and an explanation as to why all these people are starving and all these people are basically left out of the Venezuelan riches. And everybody bought it. Everybody. People that today, I bought it. All right. His rhetoric was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. His social consciousness, his humanistic love, all this stuff made you tingle and made you. Of course, I was much younger and much more naive back then, but everybody bought it, and everybody voted for him. The guy had like his first four elections or so where he won by a landslide. But little by little, that started changing. He started creating alliances against the evil empire with the other evil empires of the world, and we ended up where we are today.
I think the answer is simply because Chavez was a better marketer than Maduro. I mean, let's think about this for Trump. Trump is a great marketer for himself, right? Nobody can despise that. I mean, he's a walking what do you call it, logo, so I think Chavez was a better logo for his whatever he was doing with the country than Maduro is. And again, like you said, cult of personality helped, and people got enchanted with it. Like CJ said, people around the world got enchanted with his rhetoric, got enchanted with his personality, and that's why people were more open to supporting whatever he was doing. Now you have Maduro. He's not as enchanting. He's not as a great, talking head, and not a great marketer at all. He's actually very bland, but he's trying to imitate. You see him trying to imitate Chavez all the time. But the truth is, Chavez was a way better marketer of his government than the current administration is.
And I want to kind of direct the issue here. This is kind of one of the reasons that I think that discussion of Venezuela is throttled to a certain extent across the the media. You have people, and I do follow British politics and topics like that. And Mr. Corbyn, who's the head of the Labour Party, very controversial guy across the world. He's become kind of like a pop culture figure lately because of the youth movement over there in the UK. And it says here, it says Jeremy Corbyn was announced by his own members of parliament last night for refusing to withdraw his support for Venezuela's dictatorial regime. The Labor leader has been silent for weeks as President Nicolas Maduro launched a violent crackdown that cost the lives of 100 protesters. I think that's kind of a conservative estimate.
150 plus.
Yeah. Finally, speaking out about the chaos in Caracas, he offered limp words condemning the violence inflicted by, quote, all sides. Instead of specifically criticize, hold your reaction, because if you're gonna, don't react to this yet, because after this, there's gonna be something that you're really gonna like, JC.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's coming in a few minutes, but he claimed it was important to recognize his effective and serious attempts to reduce poverty and improve illiteracy. He's talking about Maduro. Labor MPs and human rights organizations said Mr. Corbyn should have gone much further to condemn the incarceration of thousands of opposition politicians and activists. So yeah, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn, for those of you that don't know, he's kind of leading these protests in the United Kingdom due to a bunch of there was an apartment fire last month that a few people, I think it was over a dozen people died. So that was a huge crisis. He led some sort of popular rebellion claiming that the United Kingdom is falling apart. Meanwhile, his statement yesterday was the first one on Venezuela. Do you guys think that there could be in our, in the English-speaking world, some sort of person take over like Nicolas Maduro or Hugo Chavez? Are we, or because Americans like to laugh at Latin America as if the stuff that happens there can't happen here. But obviously you have Jeremy Corbyn, who's very philosophically close to Hugo Chavez. So who wants to tackle that first?
Well, I mean, Ramon, this is obvious. This is a political battle in the England. I mean, there's the right party, right? I don't remember the name of the Tories.
Yeah.
Right, you have the Tories, and then you also have infighting on the Labour Party even before the elections. I mean, remember this Jeremy Corbyn was very controversial within the Labour Party before the election, during the election, now after the election. I mean, there is infighting in the Labour Party for many months. I mean, come on, this is not new. Now, what's happening here, I think, is that you have parts of the Labour Party that wants to push him to the left, and then you have the other section of the Labour Party that wants to keep him, and then you have section of the media that to be looked bad, or certain media outlets want him to attack in a certain way. This is all a political game. All these things are political games. So these things about Venezuela, oh yeah, are you gonna comment on it? Are you gonna comment on it? Are you gonna comment on it? This is obviously a push by somebody within the party that is left, maybe the communist wing of the party, I don't know, that wants to see him, put him in a spot because they maybe have a different candidate that they wanna put in the, because they never, part of the Labour Party didn't like Corbyn, and they're still there. So this is just a political game. That's all it is.
Well, that thing that happened with Corbyn, the most opposition that he has, and I actually did. And do you guys know who Sargon of Akkad is, by the way? Are you guys YouTube fanatics? Or Sargon of Akkad he's a British commentator. A lot of interesting videos all over the world, and he breaks down this issue with the Labour Party, with the issues that they're going through. There's kind of an identity crisis there, that and they're not in the government, but it's a parallel to what's happening in Venezuela, because they are aligned philosophically with a number of the countries that Venezuela is aligned with, including Iran, including Cuba, and I think that one of the Achilles heels of our society in America is, which I don't think that we can change because we would lose who we are, is that we allow that pluralism to occur. I did bring up Abby Martin a few times, who I think is a despicable person personally, but can I say as an American that we can't hear people like Abby Martin talk about her ideas? Even, I mean, I can't do it because it would contradict everything that I talk about. Juan Carlo, what's your take on this issue with international support for Nicolas Maduro among the political left?
Well, it's just left leaves so much to be desired. Let me just go back to your original question. You asked, do you think that could happen? What's happening in Venezuela could happen here, or could it happen in Europe? Well, no, I don't think it can happen. It's happening. It's happening as we speak. And that's why you and I have had some conversations in which we end up talking about politics, and we all, I don't know, my view to many is laughable, because the reality of the world is that politics are here to stay. They have been here forever. They're going to continue being here. That's just the way the world plays. However, something that I have learned, and I have learned it precisely doing activism for Venezuela, is that everybody in society has a role to play. And the role of a politician is to do politics and to play those games. All right? But that's not our game. The game of the people is not to play politics. The game of the people is to demand to be represented. And if they cannot be represented, if their values and the way of life cannot be represented, then they need to remove those politicians. What they cannot do is assume the role of the politician and start playing politics, which is what we're doing. And they know how to manage that game very well. So while we are on in every election, we end up talking about immigration, or we end up talking about gay rights, or we end up talking about abortion, or all this minutia that really doesn't matter much in the great scheme of things. We are not talking about the elephant in the room. And whether you're libertarian and I'm liberal and Carlos is conservative, or whatever, all the spectrum, it doesn't matter, because we all have the same interest. Everybody has the same interest. Everybody wants the same thing. But the moment that somebody tells you, well, yeah, we want that, but the way to get it is this, then all of a sudden you slap a label, you shove yourself into a party, and that's the pluralism that we're seeing. And it's the old divide and conquer. It's the old divide and conquer. And we cannot, our role as citizens, I don't believe, and this is my opinion, I don't believe it ought to be into playing this and getting lost. But that's actually what's happened. You get lost in all this political maneuvering, almost like if it was Game of Thrones, and it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Everybody wants a job. Everybody wants a good living. Everybody wants for the kids to go to school. Everybody wants health care. Everybody, it's just a way to get it. So we get lost there. So yes, this stuff is happening here, and it's happening now.
Yeah, and I think like the thing that you're talking about, the pluralism and the issues of division that JC is bringing up. Can you lower the volume again? I can still hear myself.
I got it. I barely hear myself.
Oh, okay. And where's it coming from?
Say something.
Well, I'll try to. Here, it's fine now. The whole issue with pluralism, I think, is the flaw of the opposition that both of you have been talking about, because they're playing in kind of a tragic game of democracy's rules against the government that's playing by dictatorship rules.
Exactly.
And it's bizarre. I've seen it. I don't know if I've seen it anywhere. I really can't think about it. Can I bring up? This might be a story that will piss you guys off, but Ken Livingston, who's related to Jeremy Corbyn, they're in the same party. He said this, and say agree or disagree. He says Venezuela crisis is due to Chavez's failure to kill the oligarchs, and he means it literally. Ken Livingston, and in America we don't know who he is. Ken Livingston was the mayor of London in the mid 2000s, I think. And he's known for being kind of an idiot, and a lot of the issues with I don't know if you guys have been following, but the issues with the Labor Party and the Jews are connected to him, because he'll just say, well, the fucking Jews did they did the fucking 9/11, and he'll be like, yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys don't know it, but he'll say statements like this, and he made this statement. He said. He's blamed the turmoil in Venezuela on the unwillingness of the former president, Hugo Chavez, to execute oligarchs after he came to power. And it says Livingston, who is suspended from the Labor Party for some of the remarks I was just talking about, he said he also blamed the economic crisis in the country on the government's failure to take his advice on investment in infrastructure, which he said would have reduced the Latin American states' dependence on oil. Now, that's something... given his bizarre statement before that, I've actually heard that before, that's actually a credible reason.
Sure.
So this brings me to a question that Dean asked earlier about confiscating businesses. Do you guys think that maybe they should have gone a little more hardcore, as Livingston is saying? But I know the answer won't be that. But do you think that Chavez had at any point a working model that would have brought Venezuela prosperity irrespective of the oil prices. You know, he nationalized a lot of these industries, forced a lot of these what Livingston calls oligarchs out of the market. Do you think at any point it was a fully functioning economy?
Uh, whew, that's a loaded question. It's where to begin. I mean, again, framing. You know, framing is important in the question, and pre-90s is important in the question, and also, you know, you want to look at statistics on the investment in the country and the GDP growth during Chavez. You can look at the um, the growth of the private sector under Chavez, even though he had you know, he has nationalized a lot of the big ones. So I'm sure there were good policies there that given an effective and less of a corrupt you know, management, and less of a completely partisan persecution of the opposition. Um, no, I don't think my speakers are on. Hello? Yeah, my speakers are not on. Um, so given that, I mean, I think there were some good policies that I'm sure better results given the crazy persecution that began in the beginnings of 2000s. But I mean, but the thing is that, I mean, if you look at the radical advances against the private industry, I think that their balance, although they tried, the balance of for and against the private sector actually hurt them. And then, you know, add that in, plus the instability of the political you know, situation in Venezuela, which decreased the international investment in the country. I mean, this is a loaded question. I mean, to answer that question, I need a whole hour. But I will say not it, you know, it's not everything of one color. You know, let's look at everything. So
Well,
I would say what I said before, Ramon. Personally, and many in the opposition would like to cut my head off for saying this. I do think that Chavez, when he began, his heart was true, and he wanted to be sort of the savior of Venezuela and create a not just for Venezuela, but for Latin America. He wanted to unify Latin America and bring more social justice and all this stuff. I do think that that's how he began. Uh, a lot of people will disagree with me and actually want to beat me up for saying that. But I do think that after a while of a constant fight against the opposition and the oligarchy, he got hardened. And that's when he started taking measures that were radical and were completely insane. And they were more of a nationalistic, they had more of a nationalistic uh, motivation behind it rather than an economical or a financial basis. And so things, I think that the 4 years of his government, he spent basically fighting the opposition. He couldn't do anything. And however, like Carlos said, there's plenty of statistics of GDP and all that stuff for all those years. But all that stuff also depends on the oil prices, which at that time were very high. So it's hard to tell what would have been, you know. Or but I do think at the beginning, let's say this: he had all the tools, and he had everything anybody could have wished to make of Venezuela one of the greatest nations in the world. Now, hindsight is 2020. Seeing the people today and seeing their history and how they have reacted throughout the entire 19 years, I can tell that this wasn't going to end well, no matter what, because they're just inept. and worse than inept. They are they have a psychological resentment against uh, anything that is not uh, socialistic, communistic, Russian, China kind of heart set against the United States evil empire. And so hindsight being 2020, this wasn't going to end well, even if Chavez would have had the best intentions in his heart.
So I'm gonna say, and after that, I have a question that both of you are really gonna jump on, and then maybe we can move to a close, because we've been doing this for 2 hours now. But so I believe, similar to what JC just said, that Chavez, when he was coming up through the system, trying to become the new leader of Venezuela, I think that he did have very visionary intentions. But the inflation of the ego once you get into power. I mean, there's that. I don't remember. There's that cliched phrase: "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely."
Right.
And I think that was what was his name? Edmund Burke, but I couldn't be. Somebody look it up. You guys all have Google, but anyway, this is a topic where people start to question motives, and some people would say that Chavez from the beginning was just trying to enrich himself, and those would probably be the people that you're fighting with, and the purists in the opposition, who themselves they're no great leaders. I mean, they obviously led the country into the situation where Chavez came to power.
That's right. That's right.
So we can't just act as if these people came to power through a vacuum. A lot of people want to talk about how Mao was an awful person, and he was, but remember, the guy before him was an incompetent buffoon, and Chiang Kai-shek. That's how a lot of these countries, they fall into this situation where there's mismanagement years before that they take power, and whatever. You can't just blame one person for an entire crisis. I mean, even though Chavez did a lot of things that were out of this world in terms of seizing power. The question is, and you've already talked about it, JC, does Venezuela have drug cartels, and do they have influence in the government? Now, you've already talked about it in a previous session. Maybe go into who are they cooperating with? But go ahead. It's freestyle time for you on that topic, and Carlos, you can react too if you want.
Well, I just said facts that have come up and that are very documented by the international media and also by the media in Latin America. What's happening has been happening, like you said, Chavez didn't happen in a vacuum. And even before Chavez was there was a drug problem in Latin America, stemming from the FARC in Colombia. Colombia, basically half of Colombia, the southern half, is FARC territory. So really, when you talk about Colombia, you're really talking about two countries. You're talking about the northern and the southern Colombia. Southern Colombia is FARC territory, which is a socialist guerrilla, and they have created a peace zone or a peace deal, and peace in quotation marks because they have squabbles all the time, where they said to what they call the oligarchs and the whites, you take the north, which is actually what we know as Colombia, all the cities and all the industry and all the friendly apparatus to the United States, and we'll take the south. And so they had that deal, and they had very much like the Bolivarian mindset like Chavez had. Before Chavez, they were concentrated there, and some in Ecuador, some in Peru and Bolivia, and they had no means to get money other than running cocaine, basically, and so they did. Now, when Chavez came into power, the logical alliances happened, in which Chavez hooked up with them, and Chavez started, like I said, what he wanted to do in his Bolivarian vision was create a union between countries in Latin America, and so he started taking all the wealth, the oil wealth, and distribute it to all of Latin America. So he's given a lot of oil money to Cuba, to Haiti, and this is an oversimplification because I'm talking here so quickly. In different forms, he has taken different forms. Where Haiti has received a lot of money, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Salvador, Nicaragua. All of these countries have been sucking the tits of this cow, of the oil cow. Well, as you can tell, I mean, even with the barrel 120, 140, whatever it got when it was good, it wasn't enough. So they started running drugs. So, and this is a fact. Uh, the cocaine used to flow out of Colombia, and now it's flowing out of Venezuela, and uh, it's flowing out of Venezuela under the complacent eye of the regime and also the military. So every time they get a drug, a shipment to Europe or the United States or wherever, there's always a military general or somebody in the military implicated. And to the point that, as I mentioned before in the show before, two of Maduro's wife's uh, sons are involved in it, and they were tried here in the United States about it. They were running drugs, using Venezuelan planes, using Venezuelan government equipment and government personnel to move this stuff. I mean, they get shipments as big as 20 tons. Were stopped the other day. The other day, it's been a couple of months ago, in going into Spain in a cargo plane, and they're constantly discovering drugs. Now, what I believe is that, and what is I have no way of verifying this, but that the very Diosdado Cabello, which is one of the congressmen in parliament with the Chavismo, and the vice president uh, are said to be part of this cartel that are running drugs out of Venezuela. And DEA has confirmed it, and you can believe whatever you want to believe about that. But the fact is that there is a lot of different cartels in Venezuela, and a lot of different organized crime syndicates running drugs and living off of crime and enacting criminal acts on the general population.
So, Carlos, before I go ahead, do you want to respond to that, or?
Oh, there's always been cartels in Venezuela. I mean, come on, look at the justice on the 90s. I mean, you're gonna tell me that they did an overarching great work on prosecuting these cartels? Come on, you know. What we have now is just it's what we always had. We have cartels that run their business, and they subvert the police to work with them. Otherwise, they kill their families. Right? You have documented videos and documented statements of people in prison actually running these operations. I mean, you have the Ministry of Prisons. We have a Ministry of Prisons for some reason, and she appears right next to one of the main guys in one of the biggest prisons. I mean, this guy is a killer, and she appears like hugging him. Come on, this is obvious.
In bed.
So yeah, in bed. They work together. Yeah, exactly. That's right. They were sitting on a bed, and she was hugging him. And there's a YouTube video that talks about there was a subvert, that there was a something going on in the jail. The prisoners were rising, and then she thanked this guy, which is a major kingpin, for subverting the uprising in the prison. Okay, so this is overt, obviously. Now, but it's not specific. Let's not because this is something that I think this is an unpopular opinion coming in. I think that the U.S. Western media actually makes an over like bombastic statements about like, oh, this socialist government is a narco no government. It's like, really? Do we want to talk about the CIA? Because we have a lot of shit. So again, I don't know why this topic is coming up as a point of tension, because we have a worldwide problem with traffic. And there's a report by Vice that was really nice on, actually Vice did a great job on that reporting. I was very surprised, but they explained how the traffic works. It comes from South America, it goes to the ports, it gets to Africa. They go through this Silk Road per se, where it gets all the way from Western Africa to sub-Saharan, north of the Sahara Desert, Africa, and then it gets to the Europe where people consume it. And they have actually the whole thing. They actually went through the whole process. So again, drugs in Venezuela have always been there. It's not news to me.
So the only thing that I can add, and I have to say that I'll agree with these guys that I don't think that the issue of narco trafficking is, and I know exactly what Carlos is talking about, which is that the CIA has used drugs in the. I'm a huge critic, as a somebody who has followed the Cold War, of the CIA's role all throughout history. They were dealing heroin from through the mafia during the 50s
They
to the
are
United States.
currently.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that how far back it goes, but just the CIA, not to mention probably related organizations before that. This is the drug war is kind of one of the more phony things that are, and I don't have an answer for. I have friends who have died of overdoses of opiates, so it's not like I'm pro opiates, but I do want to talk a little about the evolution. A lot of people, we have Netflix here in America. We talk about this show Narcos, amazing show, but it's outdated. Why? Because they talk about the Medellin cartel, which was active until the early 90s. And what they don't talk about what happened after that, at least not to my knowledge. I'm kind of not caught up on it. But what happened was that originally, these plantations or tracts of land where these landowners would grow this cocaine, those were completely held by these massive landholders, these landlords like Escobar. Pablo Escobar would be one, and I think his name was Ochoa, the Ochoa brothers. And eventually, after the CIA went in there and quote unquote solved the situation and killed a lot of those guys, who took it over? Guerrilla groups that the CIA was also at war with, called the FARC and the ELN, the National Liberation Army in Colombia. And these were groups that nominally they are communist. And then what happened, to put it bluntly, is that the communists went into business in order to bring communism to Colombia, except the intention was not to win the war. The intention was to kind of use it to make money. This has happened all over the world. It doesn't just depend, Al Qaeda and Hezbollah have done it, and I'm sure other governments have. And I think you can get from the three of us who have vastly different opinions a very similar opinion on this, that issues like the drug war have no ideological barriers. It is a resource that people can use to leverage power, just like the oil, just like the diamonds and other resources. And it's like it's like we're having an issue where America and Russia, they're doing this brinksmanship over all these countries. And it's not like I want America to lose our economic strength over the world, but just like we've cautioned before, involving ourselves in the war in Venezuela or whatever is going on in Venezuela, intervention, we've already been intervening in Colombia for years. Plan Colombia, people complain justifiably about our investment in these countries in the Middle East. Plan Colombia was one of the most expensive aid packages in the history of the U.S. government that people don't talk about, because technically a lot of it is not military aid. A lot of it is they'll send like these what are these heat sensing plane helicopters or whatever, and they'll call it drug interdiction technology for civilian use. And I do want to. Angel wanted me to ask this question. Do you think, and this is kind of a glass half empty question, do you think the protests will end in Venezuela, guys? Do you think that the government can ever expect tranquility?
Probably. I mean, they're advised by the Cubans, right? So I mean, these people know how to subvert protests. So what probably is going to happen is that yeah, protests are going to keep going for a while, but these people are advised by the best at kind of ending these things, however possible. So I think people are going to keep doing in the streets. I think people are going to keep going, but but something else has to happen. I mean, I know CJ probably has a different opinion on this. That's why I kind of vouch for, even though we have a corrupt powers in different ministries, I think we got to give it a chance and just try to do it electorally. I know it's you can't trust it, right? But we got to try everything we can, and that's one of the things I support.
Well, with their electoral question again, yeah, we can try that, and yeah, we can win, but so what? They'll come and remove whoever we elected whenever they want, and they will only let them operate within the confines of what they allow. To the question, will the people stop uh, the opposition and the people? Let's not talk about the opposition. Let's just talk about the people, the common people like you and I. Will we stop? Well, I mean, I wouldn't, but I'm not armed. And the moment they start shooting bullets at me like they are already doing, eventually I'm gonna do one of two things. I'm gonna have to worry about whether to get where I'm gonna get food from, and if I have kids, I'm gonna have to worry about my kids and my family. I'm gonna have to worry about keeping what I have and making the best of it, or I'll go with a resistance, turn violent, get a gun, get something, and turn into a terrorist. And so this is exactly how terrorism is born. We say we fight terrorism abroad. I think we make terrorism abroad. We make it happen. We manage it. And I think this is the scenario that every Venezuelan is being put before them. That's the choice. You become a terrorist and try to do whatever you can without weapons, or feed yourself and lay down and die. That's the choice. I don't see any other choice though. But I'm constantly every day waiting for a miracle.
So I think it's time for us to wind down. I thank everybody that's joined us, the guests, Carlos and Juan Carlo, JC, and to put a bow on what's been going on. Um, I've been sharing throughout the chat. I don't know if you guys can see the chat, but there's these charities, a number of related groups that JC shared with me, all for Venezuela. Please take a look, whichever one you think is best suits your your profile or your knowledge. And we're dealing with a country that is being held hostage by its own leadership and its pattern of what it's been doing for the past 20 years. And America is at a crossroads right now where we have to, we're remembering our own interventions overseas and all the things that we've been talking about. So we're not taking this as a topic where, there's an easy solution. But one of the worst things that we can do is allow this to happen in the darkness. That's what happened in Cambodia, by the way, a country where, a third of the society was basically exterminated for the sake of an idea that was a total failure. Now, I'm not going to exaggerate and say that this is going to happen in Venezuela, but we've seen destruction on a massive scale there. And this is something that can happen in any country if it can happen in Venezuela. This is not a country that started out as some sort of charity case in any respect. The guys that you've been talking to, they don't seem to me like they were they were raised in a country that was devoid of civil society and an education system that could give them the tools to really convey what they've been talking about. Because honestly, I think I could be out of the room and they could probably be managing this themselves. And it's very sobering to me to see this going on, and yet people are going about their daily lives, focusing even the things we focus on that are in the world. They're really kind of trivial. What else is going on in terms of international relations that are really catching people's attention right now? There's a migrant crisis in Europe. Well, this problem includes a massive migrant crisis in Venezuela, and people don't focus on that. And it includes, we're talking about, if you're into finance, I don't know if some of you in the chat are into finance, the currency issue. People are asking, will the dollar collapse or whatever? Well, we've been talking about how a currency collapses and how an economy falls apart, and there's all these issues. And I do believe that people have to start spreading the topic of Venezuela and focusing on it, because it will become a regional crisis. It's already a regional crisis. If you ask the people of Colombia and Brazil, I believe Brazil has less of a issue with the refugees because it's rough terrain. But we're talking about, I think last week, 25,000 people crossed the border in one day to Colombia. And Colombia is not a country that is built to sustain a massive humanitarian crisis. Where do you think they're going to head? They're not going to head towards Ecuador. I can tell you that.
They are heading here.
Yeah, they will head towards, and if you think, oh, let Mexico deal with it. This is not the way to relate to things that are going on in a country that is as crucial to the world as Venezuela. Not that I'm saying if they had nothing, we should ignore it either. But I want to thank these guys. Each of you can have the final word, and then we'll close. Let's go with you first, Carlos.
You want him to respond, or you just a comment?
You respond and kind of give your own conclusion if you have anything else to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said everything we needed to say. I think it's pretty clear what's going on, and it's we'll see what happens, and I would recommend people to always take a step back, and there's a lot of emotions right now happening in Venezuela, and when we talk about Venezuela, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of partisan, and it has good reasons, of course, I'll be emotional if I was living in Venezuela. I understand completely. So I will recommend people to just give it a chance, give a chance to read about it, so you can talk about it. Because a lot of people get into these bubbles and nobody gets into agreements. Nobody finds the common, common grounds where we can actually be against the same thing or for something. So that's my view. And that's kind of my closing argument.
Right, I'm sharing that book that I have the link to it, and I'm sharing it in the chat.
Sure.
For the revolution in Venezuela.
So by the way, that book, just to comment on that book, is written by different people from different sides, and I'm almost done with it, and I cannot tell you which side the book is on. So that means it's good. It's a good book. So it just lays out the facts, lays out numbers that might be confusing for some, it might be surprising for some. But it lays out a good, like, here's the facts, right? Then you make an argument. Well, what do you want to do? What do you do about it, right? So it's a good book.
JC, your turn.
I just want to say to the listening audience that I'm 54. I never, in my wildest imagination, thought that what's happening in Venezuela could ever happen. I came to the United States when I was 17. When I came here, people were coming to Miami just for the weekend, and now they're fighting to buy food. Um, and so I've gotten an education by staying abreast of what's happening in Venezuela, and I can tell you that what's happening there, it can happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere, and it has happened everywhere in history. We are not exempt, and and it is very doubtful that it will happen. You always watch these movies of something happening, boom, one day. It almost never happens like that. It always happens very gradually, so gradually that you don't know what that is happening. And the good reason to stay abreast of this conflict is because it's ongoing, it's not over, and it's dynamic, and you can get a very, very, very good education as to what to look for here in the United States. Because I see many of the same things happening here as we speak. So I just leave the show with that thought. We are the guardians. We are the guardians of the generations to come. It is up to us. You can get lost in all this political bullshit, or you can watch and try to do everything you can to do activism and to get involved. One of Venezuela has 30 million people. Only 8 million are voting in this democratic election. So, what kind of democracy do you really have? What kind of liberty do you really have? The same thing happens in the United States when only a quarter of people, 25% of the people vote. What kind of democracy and liberty do you really have? You either leave this your liberty and your democracy and your life in the hands of these politicians, or you take it into your own hands and participate. That's
Okay,
it.
so I want to thank these guys, and everybody in the chat has, by the way, been, you know, very impressed by just the breadth of knowledge that you've shared with us, and clearly your experiences. And I think that these guys, how many hours have we been? I mean, me and Juan Carlo, we've done now probably 4 hours, 3 hours now with Carlos, including this, and 2 hours with the third person, Gabriel. What can you do in order to help Venezuela? First of all, you should take a look at those charities that JC shared, because they are attempting to navigate this aid crisis where the government is not allowing aid to go in there, which is a story in and of itself we haven't really covered. And as Carlos shared, there is this book and a number of other books that I might share on the channel later that we've talked about that document the issue with Venezuela, so you can become more aware of it, not just comment. And it's easy to be in an echo chamber, and everybody that I'm seeing here, we're all mostly from the same background, but it's easy to just comment on a crisis that we have our own angle on. But I do want people to share this, and if nothing else, if people are not going to watch this, we have to keep this topic in the minds of the creators on YouTube and the rest of social media. Just the topic of Venezuela. It's not just an issue of a few people just in a chat room or whatever. It's an issue of an entire nation that's on the streets right now. A lot of them are picking through the trash for food, and it's an issue that we don't have to deal with it all here until it affects our markets, and that's kind of a sad commentary on really the effect it's having. So good night, everybody. I'll talk to you guys for a couple minutes just to see where we're standing for the next step. And Good night, and libertad para Venezuela.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.